Okay, go ahead, Mark. You're muted.
Mark. There we go.
All right, let me do it again. And then I have to go from one screen to the other. I forget how to do it sometimes. So, all right, let me see here. Let's see here. Sorry, folks. I can't get. Okay. Am I still on?
I feel like Mark's trying to make us all giddy with anticipation for the start of this meeting. Mark, you muted again.
All right. The July 13, 2024 Scrolls School District Board of Directors meeting is called to order at 5:35 p.m. Roll call of board members present. Mark Everett present. Kate Grandusky.
Kate, you're muted as well.
Kate can give a thumbs up or
Present.
okay. Brad.
Present.
Okay. Val.
Present.
And Narse.
Present.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, folks, it's taken so long here. The school board will take public comment via Google form. The link is on the board meeting page on the district website. A designated email address was also added and comments received will be read at the appropriate time on the agenda. Would you join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I think we're doing introductions of audience and staff this evening because I think we have some folks joining. Is that correct? Maybe Kathy. So, if you've joined us this evening, could you just say hello?
Hi, I'm Brenda, and I have joined.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sean O'Neill,
Hello.
Assistant Superintendent.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Hi, this is Melinda Fisher. I was on the budget committee.
Okay.
This is Mike Conroy. I'm on the budget committee.
I think that's it, Mark.
Oh.
You're muted again, Mark.
Do I have a motion to approve the tonight's agenda?
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. I'm in favor. I'm a yes. Narse?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and Val.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. I don't believe we have a student representative any longer.
Siobhan's term is done and we
Yep.
will, Dave will reach out to the new rep in August
Okay.
and kind of explain the process and everything. And then we should have him in the beginning of September.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Parker here with calendar notes, recognition, correspondence. So,
Right.
So Dave, go ahead if you.
Perfect. I'm going to actually push most of my comments to my presentation because of pretty much everything we're doing right now is all around reopening and planning and some of those types of things. So I'm going to save kind of that part of it.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll catch you then. So unscheduled public appearance. So I believe David is monitoring the comments. The board appreciates community members sharing information during public comments. Are there any comments that have been received?
Yes, there's one that we had received through the Google form, so I can go ahead and read that. It is from Mary Whitmore. Thank you to the board for their service and especially Kathy Bonson, who has been so patient and helpful. I appreciate the board's thoughtful response to my too long list of suggestions and observations, reevaluating our reading program. The best way for any board member to experience the superiority of explicit phonics is to see how it is taught and how the students learn. It's truly beautiful. I hope to make that opportunity available to you after Cascade Heights and Mitch Charter Schools open in the fall. I encourage everyone to participate in the Eventbrite Summer Symposium on Reading, July 30th. It's a $20 fee. Give Dave Parker your reflections. In 2007, I published 16 15-minute videos on YouTube teaching how to write, read, and pronounce the 71 phonograms of the 45 sounds of English. Search for Mary Whitmore, Learn to Read English Fast. I didn't know then I was preparing to teach in COVID world. I hope the district will recognize the centennial of the 19th Amendment, white women's right to vote on August 26. Google Dr. Alice Paul. I assume the statewide reading assessment was waived this year. I'd like you to see some of the scores of EP schools in past years. BR in Salem has been most helpful with ODE data recovery. I should have it available for you at the next meeting. I haven't heard if we are going to adopt a hybrid approach to school in September. I hope ABC will announce the plan soon. I am tutoring online now and don't charge, so if you know a struggling reader, please leave a message at 360-914-8044. That's the end.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Okay. Hearing none.
I'll make a motion that we approve tonight's consent agenda as presented, including the meal prices.
I'll second it.
Mark, you accidentally hit mute again.
Oh.
And now you're back.
Okay, we'll call for a vote. I am a yes. Narce?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And Val?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes. We are on to, let's see, we have a presentation next, and that's a budget update by Eileen Clute. So Eileen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Tonight, we have a budget update. In May, we had our budget season for 2021 budget cycle, and it was kind of an unusual cycle for budgeting because of all of the closures and the uncertainty with funding. So at this time, we wanted to bring to you an update of where we are with our budget for 2021 and what we know. At this time, we still don't have any guarantees on funding. We don't have a whole lot of more information than what we had in May to provide you with a kind of comprehensive budget update. So tonight we were just going to talk a little bit about what we know for closing out this 19-20 year and what we know moving forward into next year. So first, talk a little bit about the 19-20 budget update. It's still early. We're still working through all of closing out 19-20, finalizing all of the payroll for both classified and licensed July and August that gets closed against the 19-20 budget. We won't know the final ending fund balance until mid to late August. But what we do know right now is that between our furloughs and other payroll related costs from what we saved in May and June is about $1.3 million. Our contracted services through custodial furloughs, reduction in other service contracts, particularly our transportation contract, we've saved another $200,000. Just those combined is about $1.5 million in savings from what was built into that cash flow presented at the budget committee meeting. So we have significant savings moving into next year. A little bit about the 2021 budget update. June 24th was when the special session started. That's the session that we were hoping would focus on funding and balance the budget so we would know what actions we would have to take moving into next year. But during this special session, they did not focus on budget. They focused on policy. So there wasn't any final decisions made about how the budget was going to be balanced. They're wanting to find out if there's going to be any additional Federal Reserve prior to the next special session. And they hope to have another special session at the end of July or even the beginning of August to balance the budget and talk financials. So it might be the 1st of August before we know for sure what that funding level is going to be like for next year. My last business managers ODE meeting, we met on June 26th. We are supposed to have another meeting, I believe, on this Friday to get more updates on where we're at. But basically what come out of it is ODE's publishing the new state school fund estimates based on the $9 billion state school fund adjustment or state school fund estimates. This is primarily because we don't have any guaranteed information other than the $9 billion. And the next section down, the governor's prioritization. The governor has come out with a commitment or a prioritization committing that she wants to fully fund the state school fund at $9 billion moving into next year. She wants to hold general fund appropriations for early learning, committed to ensuring continuation of programs focused on supporting underserved students, and then maintaining general fund appropriations for SPED and nutrition programs. Any other decisions she wants to wait until after August 1st to see if this special session and any other changes with federal revenue come through. So there's still a lot up in the air right now about how the budget's going to be balanced and the specifics to what we will be funded at next year. there is a really good chance that we will be funded at the $9 billion. So all of our savings that we incurred in May and June through the furloughs and closure would then be able to go towards reopening schools next year and all of the additional costs that's going to be associated to that. Other funds for 2021, there's the CARES Act ESSER funds, and that is about $923,000 to the Forest Grove School District. $31,000 goes to the community school. $1,000 of that goes to our long-term care and treatment grants. And then there's also potentially part of it will have to go to other local private schools based on their ADM. That decision hasn't been finalized. It's still sitting with the DOJ and ODE to finalize a recommendation. So part of that 923 could end up going to local private schools. At this time, we're just going to set aside a portion of it and not commit to spending it at this time. We do have our grant approved by ODE already. It includes using those funds for additional cleaning, student supervision for cohorts, supplies and equipment for reopening, and then my last bullet there is just really in our initial planning for reopening, the costs of reopening for next year and just the additional cleaning and supervision and supplies to be able to reopen is going to exceed this 923. So our hope is between the savings from the general fund and this 923 is that we will be okay moving into next year. Measure 98 and the Student Success Funds, those two awards, grant awards, are going to be awarded after August 1st this year. They're going to also wait till after the special session to allocate those funds. At this time, we're looking at about a 37% overall reduction moving into next year, but we won't know for sure until after those are published. And then that is all I have tonight.
So
Questions?
Yeah, question on your last bullet there on ODE estimates that there will be a prioritization of the SSA funds. So that means that they're going to prioritize those over 98. Is that right? Or does just that mean that they're going to have some SSA funds? I don't.
So I can answer that if you don't have that, Eileen. So here's kind of what I'm hearing on the SSA and SIA. SSA was the whole fund, and there was broken out into it two other buckets of money. One was kind of focused on early learning, and the second one was around nutrition services, transportation. And then the first bucket was the student investment account. And they are looking at when whatever money they do put aside for SSA, they are still looking at trying to serve the early learning efforts and some of the other equity and some of those other. And so we're just not exactly sure how much is actually going to flow through to the SIA part of this that we created a plan for. So that's what I believe that is, unless Eileen has other info.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, from my understanding is the SIA funds between the three different buckets, it's an overall reduction of 37%, but that prioritization of where the reduction comes from, whether it's bucket 1, 2, or 3, that's where that balancing and prioritization is going to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, I have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Narcy.
So the question that I have is additional cleaning. Does that Is that just mainly supplies, or does that involve additional FTE for janitorial? And I can't remember if we outsource or if we have in-house.
So I can answer that, Narce. We do outsource our custodial, and it's through Sodexo. And the additional cleaning is kind of a combination between what we're looking at is increased day cleaning during the day to do the playgrounds and touch points and restrooms, and then also the classroom disinfecting during the night. And then as another layer, potentially fogging the district weekly or in between cohorts. So we're still looking to see what that, what level of service for next year, but those are things that we're talking about.
Does that include for buses too?
Yes, the buses would be sanitized nightly.
Thank you.
But I think we are looking at increased FTE for this, whether that's contract or whether it's ours. There's still money. They're beginning to put aside money because it's going to take more people to do this work.
So Eileen, when you said that, I think you said that the grant, the 923 would be, we would exceed, our costs would exceed that. I think you said, do we have an estimate on what our costs might be? If we know, or is that right? It's going to exceed that?
We do know that it's going to exceed the 923, but how much we're still in the planning phase. So we haven't decided, cohort A, B, how many days, how it's alternating. So there's still a lot of decisions that have to be made before we can finalize what this looks like. So we've put together a few models for supervision and cleaning to see if we have an education model of one thing, this is what it would look like, and different layers of cleaning. So right now it's a lot of estimates and guesses, and but we're working through all of the specifics. So I don't have an exact number for you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Eileen? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Thank you, Eileen, for that. Thank you for that. Let's see. The next item is an action item, and it's the Great Body Works is the next agenda item. And that looks like Mr. O'Neill is going to present that to us. So, John?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So as you know, the Forest Grove School District has been using the Great Body Shop for grades K-6 as its adopted health curriculum. In prior board meetings, this curriculum has been identified as one of 2 approved health curriculums statewide by ODE. And for the 1920 school year, the board asked for the district to survey students, parents, and teachers in regards to their feedback. And this data was presented by myself and Brenda Lindsay earlier this year. Feedback was very positive. We had 78% of the K-6 teachers respond and 73% of our students respond. And that was some of the data that we shared. Also part of the data was the flexibility for incorporating the curriculum into the teaching day, as the brochure format in English and in Spanish presented students and parents the ability to incorporate this as a consumable. So they could take it home, students could take it home and review it with their children. The parent survey revealed that 50% of the parents said yes, they have received it at home, and 78% of the 58% had spent time reviewing the curriculum with their individual child at home. As a next step, to provide additional professional development to teachers to better use the curriculum, that was identified and that was our plan, but due to the pandemic closure, this has not been provided. So at the conclusion of the presentation, the board asked for the pricing for a single year versus a multi-year contract to be brought back for discussion and approval. And that's what we're bringing back to you this evening. As a follow-up, 1-year subscription fee is $29,892.50 for this coming year. A 3-year subscription price is $78,094.50, a savings of $11,583. The 5-year subscription fee of $126,296.50 represents a savings of $23,166.75 over that 5-year period when comparing to buying each year on an annual subscription. As a result of this pricing information, the district administration recommends the 5-year subscription rate due to the cost savings this agreement entails during the time of financial concerns. Any questions?
Well, I have a question, John. It's a 5-year subscription, so I mean, I understand that, and the cost savings is. When's the next adoption? Do you know what I mean? Are we a couple of years late on it already?
Good question. We were right there the first year that we approved this curriculum.
Okay.
The good thing is that the Great Body Shop monitors Oregon laws, and they incorporate additional mandates or requirements into the curriculum. And so they update it. It's not a stagnant one and done like the rest of our curriculums, which is pretty amazing. But they usually look at an adoption period of 7 years. So this would carry us to the end or maybe 1 year beyond ODEs. But we are waiting, as you know, for an English literature adoptions, English language arts adoption. And that has been pushed off, I believe, an additional year by ODE for whatever reason. So anyway, it looks like this would easily cover us and meet those new state requirements that keep coming about every year, and appropriately so, because as you know, social emotional learning is also tied in, as well as other key topics such as suicide prevention, awareness, etc.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for John?
Oh, yeah, this is Valerie. I was wondering if they have a digital option. If we're going to be doing online school, do they have an option just to push that out that way?
Yes, we have access to both and have had access to both, but we're going to lean on that much more so this coming year in terms of providing those links to parents and teachers. And so we have yet to determine whether or not we're going to mail out the brochures that we get monthly or bi-monthly, I think it's quarterly or something like that. But yes, they do provide that, and that will give us the flexibility that we need.
And John, those magazines are sent out monthly.
Monthly, great.
John, do we pay on a yearly basis, or do we have to pay upfront for 5 years?
Right now, currently, we've been paying at an annual subscription rate. Remember, the board wanted us to, survey students, parents, and teachers, and we did that, and we shared that feedback with you. The big thing was we need additional professional development. Due to the closure, we pushed it back. So what we're looking at tonight, we could go ahead and do it's at your leisure. It's at the board's leisure and direction. We're asking for a 5-year contract just because of the savings that it is going 5.
So when you say professional development, is that going to be part of the renewal this year in the fall?
We can do that, but one thing that we found most helpful is like train the trainer format, where our teachers are trained, and in our last, we have a standing health Committee, Health Leadership Committee, and that's Brian Gamble, Cheryl Hall, Della Emmerich, Cindy Reesley, Ellie Holscher, Lori Lester, Wendy Seitz, Heidi Smith, and Brenda Lindsay has done a phenomenal job leading up that work for me. But as individuals turn over, we add additional representation. So what we're looking at is, I just need to be totally transparent. We have to, as a part of the reopening requirements, and Dave's going to go over this, we need to identify a learning management system. We need to identify a learning platform. And so that's going to be the priority for our professional development. And we've shared this with our union leadership last week, and they are 100% behind that. So right now, the priority is reopening and giving the teachers the tools and training they need to offer a really quality program that allows us the pivot ability. Should we be total distance learning, or a classroom might be shut down, or a school might be shut down, we can move seamlessly using those new tools. But we need to prioritize that professional development training first. It is not off our plate. Brenda and I know that full well, and so does the health leadership team. But right now, we need to get up to speed on those more pressing matters that will impact every student in the district.
Yeah, John, I'm very concerned about dollars. I mean, and I know you guys are too, and I know you've presented the information, but if there's not additional money coming, from the federal government, and this pandemic gets worse in the fall, and I'm fine for a 1-year renewal, but I'm just not for 5 years. And I don't know if you sign a contract for 5 years, if you can get out of it. So my vote is just for a year, because I just don't know about the finances.
I understand.
John, this is Brad.
Yes. Yeah, Brad.
Is the contract written in a way that we have an out after a certain period of time, or are we locked into 5 years to get that discount?
Eileen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're locked in for the full 5 to get that discount.
Okay.
That's their incentive for us for that agreement.
But if we go year by year, we're paying about $5,000 more per year each year that we go, and we have to have something.
Yes, that's.
Right? I mean, if
absolutely.
If we didn't do this, then we'd have to have replace it with something else, right? So
absolutely, and our biggest challenge is developmental appropriateness from kindergarten all the way up to 6th grade. We have Melinda Wenzel, who's phenomenal in terms of 7th and 8th grade health, and she's helped us put together the 7th grade curriculum. But we don't have anyone that feels equipped, trained, and the laws keep coming, and as they should. But they just keep coming, and this does give us the flexibility to maneuver and meet those requirements.
So just to correct, so this would be about if we didn't sign on, if we did it for a year, it'd be just under $30,000, 29 something.
Yes.
If we did it for 5 years, and it'd be year by year, and so if we wanted to do it again next year, it'd be maybe 29. And if we did was that right, John? Or go?
Yeah, it went up slightly. I can't remember what we put before you last time. I was thinking it was like 28, 27. But I don't have that number right in front of me.
Okay, well, I always try and get them to the lowest number they'll possibly give us.
Yeah,
absolutely, positively their lowest number. So, anyways, so this year it'd be 29, next year it'd be 29. If we fast forwarded a year and we wanted to continue doing it, it'd be 29. If we wanted to do something else, it'd be well, it might be more, John, than 29 with the
Yeah.
other year. But if we wanted to do something else, we'd have to have a conversation about switching to something else. And there would be a cost to doing that.
Absolutely. And as you know, when we do an adoption, a district curriculum adoption of this magnitude, that means we convene. Kate remembers this, the math, district math committee. We did the same thing with health, and Brian Hawkins led that for us. Yes.
So one of the things that I think, John, would be interesting to find out is it from this company is, this is going to sound maybe kind of weird, but if they would be interested, you know, if they'd give us a good rate until the end of this adoption period, because I think I heard you say that this might take us 1 year into a new adoption period. Is that right? Or maybe it doesn't matter because they're going to adjust it. Okay, I see. So it doesn't matter. Okay, I got it.
Then what my only comment?
Yeah.
This is Brad. My only comment would be that experience with adoptions, kind of going through a process like this, 5 years is kind of a long time. And I understand that the normal adoption period is like 7 years. But I think based on the savings, I kind of did the math. I mean, 3 years sounds to me like it would be reasonable to come back and say 3 years, we'll put in for 3 years. And then when 3 years is up, we'll meet and decide whether it was effective or not. Just kind of as a process, but 5 seems like a long time to me. So I guess I would support a 3-year contract. But if the rest of the board thinks that 5 years is fine, I'd be okay with that too.
Yeah, I would prefer to do 1 more year and then see where we are financially next June, and then renew for 5 years. I'm just really worried about monies. You know, there's just so many unknowns. So I would propose 1 year and then next June, you know, consider 3 years or even 5 years. But I just think that, I don't know, I'm being conservative, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's hard because things change so fast. Like I think that social and emotional health is going to be more of a focus within the next couple of years. And is this program, I don't know, bringing enough attention to that or doing enough in that way?
It's pretty extensive. And what's really cool about it is it's development appropriate. And if you want, I can go ahead and present, you know, the scope and sequence. It was part of that health presentation that Brenda and I did last time. I'm not sure if that's helpful.
No, I remember it. I just think that so many things are changing.
They are.
In society right now that I just don't know if a long-term commitment's a good idea.
And Val, one thing about this curriculum is it does, because it's just the monthly like flyers that the kids get, the monthly little magazines, it is updated to cover whatever special topics the state of Oregon is requiring, whatever national topics were supposed to be required. The one thing I heard from staff was it's easy to implement and all their bases are like, they're covering everything they need to be covering and they're covering it at grade level appropriateness. So.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Nurse.
I remember the information being shared with us, and this was for K through 6 students, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did, you know, based on what I just heard about, things are just changing nationally and so forth and so on. I don't remember if the curriculum had anything to do with safety from, do we have police at the schools or security or Was that embedded in any of this survey curriculum? No?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Well, so
Oh yeah,
just-
did you guys see Kathy's chat about the price? I was kind of wondering that too. Mark's good at bargaining with people. Like, what's to say that the price might not go down given how the economy is and how many people are buying this program? Something to think about.
well, I think, I don't know if you can get more of a discount. I have no idea about that. It would be obviously great if you could, but
I'm just saying that
go ahead.
Kathy just chatted for the people on the phone that can't see that last year the curriculum was $33,412. So that's what, $3,000, $3,000 or $4,000 more?
Right.
Last year was?
Yeah, because I
Yes.
think 1 year is 29 or something, so maybe it is less. The only,
So I just
I guess the only thing. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, so our conversation in the background on this with our administrative team was only whether you guys choose to do 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years. We don't have a huge stake in this. It feels wrong to be spending more money for a curriculum when we could get money off, and we know that the next 3 years are going to be hard years. And if we can save some amount of money, that was the only thinking. If you feel like you would rather do 1 year right now, we're good. We were strictly thinking about how to make the most of our taxpayers' money with this purchase is what this recommendation is. All the points that you've laid out, I think, are all logical. So it really kind of comes down to what do you feel comfortable? Where do we feel comfortable saving money versus maybe checking in with this down the road, like Brad was saying, like in 3 years we do another little check. We're open to all of that. We just put it out here because it saved $29,000 over 5 years.
Okay, so I think I don't know what somebody wants to put forward for a motion, but I think in thinking about this, the 5 year is a long time, and are we signing on with the best possible for that 5 years? It sounds like maybe we're not sure. And so maybe a shorter period of time, even though it costs us more, would give us certainly latitude at some point to see what else is out there 3 years from now. So that's what, I don't know. That's what I'm kind of hearing.
Yeah, I would say, oh, go ahead.
Do you need a motion now, Mark?
Yeah, well, what Brad was going to make a comment, and then maybe we can put forward a motion.
Yeah, my comment is I think 3 years will go by really, really fast at this rate. And I think 3 years just gives us amount of a discount, plus we can evaluate it after that period of time, whether it's effective or not. I'm going to move that we adopt the program for the 3 year period with an evaluation at the end of that 3 year period. Not only evaluation of price, but also the evaluation of the curriculum.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll call for a vote. And so I am a yes. And Kate?
No.
Okay, Val?
Yes.
Narce?
No.
And Brad?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 3-2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see where I'm at here. I think next we have, we have an action item and it involves Eileen and a contract for I don't have it in front of me. Landscaping for grounds maintenance. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
grounds maintenance.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, I have as you all know, I have a conflict of interest. So I'm going to take a virtual walk into the audience right now and mute my mic. So I am out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So tonight, the district would like to extend the current ground service contract with Green Thumb Landscape Maintenance for 2 years through June 30th, 2022. All terms and conditions of our current contract and service levels would remain the same as specified in our original contract. The 2021 contract rate is $399,000. It is up by about 5% from the 2019-2020 year, primarily because of the minimum wage increases going into 2021. Effective July 1st of this year, minimum wage went up from $12.50 to $13.25. So it's about a 6% increase in just minimum wage, let alone the CPI increase of 2.8%. Tonight, administration recommends to the board to approve a contract extension with Green Thumb Landscape Maintenance as presented.
Okay, questions from board members?
Mark, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Marcy.
What is the process or procedure for landscaping maintenance companies? Is there a bid? Is this minority owned?
So I can't remember which year it was. It was the year before I started with Forest Grove. We went out for a RFP for our custodial and grounds and maintenance management service. And at that time, we only had one bidder apply on the ground side. And so we went with them, Green Thumb. And then right now we're just requesting to extend our current contract. So we haven't gone out for another RFP.
I would additional to provide other opportunities for other minority-owned companies. That's just my feedback.
Yeah, so Eileen, you said the year before you got there, we went out for an RFP. What year was that? How long has it been since we've gone out and gotten any estimates?
Oh, I'm trying to, yes.
Oh, if you can, we're just getting a lot of feedback. I know you got to speak right now, but just a reminder.
Okay. I'm trying to think, 5 years? I can't remember the exact year, but it's 5 or 6 years ago.
So maybe it's time that we get another estimate? Is there a reason why we haven't done that?
I just haven't had time this fall this spring to go out for an RFP with having other large projects going on. So I haven't had an opportunity to.
Which is a really large consideration for us right now in the reopening of school, not having a budget right now. So, I mean, this is and again, you guys can decide on like the timing of this, but I just want to call out for Eileen that we're in a full court sprint right now.
How long is this contract extension for?
2 years.
So it's expired from the previous 2 years then, Eileen, is that right? This is the end of the prior 2 year agreement?
Right, our current contract ended June 30th, and we are right now just running on a monthly extension.
Okay. How often do we typically, go for RFPs? Is there any rule, Eileen, about whether it's, for food service or busing or custodial? Is there an accepted time period for when you do when you go out for RFPs?
That's a good question. The RFPs vary between contract services. Our food service required by ODE, we have to go out every couple of years. Our Midco, because of the equipment required in our buses, it's a lot longer of a contract, so it's 10 years. And then every time we do a significant capital investment, we extend that contract. So it really depends on the level of capital and investment that the contractor is putting into it to how long we have that contract.
Is women or minority owned? I'm researching them and I can't see that on their website.
I don't believe Green Thumb is, but when we do go out for RFPs, we do score additional points for having those qualifications.
Eileen, this is Kate. I'm wondering if we could do a one-year contract and then next spring, open it up because it's been 5 years. Would that be possible?
Yes, that would be, Kate.
And that would give us time to do the RFP process, and right?
Yes, Mark.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what other people, I kind of like Kate's idea. It's for the 1 year and then do an RFP. But so.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Sure.
I make a motion that we extend the contract for Green Thumb for 1 year, and do I add, and then go out for bids for the grounds work next year?
I second.
Okay. All right. So we'll do a vote on that motion. So I'm a yes, and Kate?
Yes.
And Narce?
No.
Okay. And Val?
Yes.
So that motion will pass, and looks like there'll be the RFP process I would imagine would start sometime in the spring or late spring.
Well, can I just add in really quick about that?
Yeah.
I don't want us to forget about that process. In the spring, the budget's going to come up. There could be other things going on. I just want to make sure it gets in the calendar and it happens.
Thank you for saying that, Valerie. I echo that. That's my concern, because it's always busy, and diversity is important every day, not just it's busy time.
It will be added to the future board items.
Well, we already decided we wanted to do it. They need to add it to schedule the things, not us.
That's
right?
what I mean. I'll add it to the calendar so that it's a reminder that we need to keep it up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, let's see. I think with that, we're the last is just a information from Dave. So Dave, if you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to apologize up front because there's a lot of information here. I'll share this with you so you'll be able to get back to it. I added more text on the screens than I usually like to put on a presentation, but there was a lot of information that I wanted to try and pass on tonight. Before we get going too far, I just wanted to remind everybody that we're not in control of this, and the virus is in control. I woke up this morning to an Oregon Live article that basically says if transmission remains at current levels, we expect continued exponential growth in infections, said the report of the Oregon Health Authority. Modeling estimates that the state could see anywhere from 1,100 to 7,300 new cases per day by the end of July, depending on where the infection rates head from here. Those were really sobering statistics because we're sitting in the middle of July trying to design and create a system that's going to work September 8th. And I just want to point out that there's just so much happening each week. Here's what we're doing in our design process. We're focusing on the first thing of building a robust distance learning system. No matter what happens in the fall, there's a very good chance that we're going to be going in and out of either a hybrid or a distance learning state. And so that says to me that first thing we need to do is make sure that our distance learning is solid. Tonight, I'm going to present you some of the learning that we're getting from our experience this spring. You're going to hear about some of the successes of what we did in the spring, and then you're going to hear about some of the challenges, some of the areas that we need to focus on. We're creating a model that will work if we come back in a hybrid where we're partially in distance learning, partially at school. It'll work if we're completely in distance learning, and it will work because eventually we are going to go back to school full-time and in person, and we'll be able to transition between those states is what we're attempting to build right now. So tonight, I want to kind of roll through what we learned from this spring. If you have questions, ask them as we go along. There's a lot of slides here, so I'm going to move as quickly as I can. And like I said, I'll share this with you, so if you want to refer back to it, you can. So just as a reminder, here's kind of the basic timeline. It was March 12th where we canceled school for the end of that week and the week right before spring break. And we basically, we were looking at trying to do some supplementary learning with our distance, with our technology. We utilized Google Classroom and we utilized Google Meets as a way to which to kind of execute the curriculum and the instruction. During that period of time, during spring break, we got another message they were canceling school till the end of March, and we needed to pretty much by, actually, I think the end of April. And they gave us this new thing called Distance Learning for All, which is there were going to be a pass, no pass grades. We weren't going to be, like the grading was going to be pass, no pass. So the assessments were a lot less. We still needed to connect with kids. And then we spent the rest of the year kind of in that model. June 8th through the 19th, we surveyed staff, students, parents about how they felt about this whole experience. And so tonight, that's kind of what I'm going to spend some time talking about. The first one I want to talk about were the parent surveys. So on these surveys, we had kind of effects of COVID-19 on their families, physical, financial, psychological, family experiences with schooling at home, assessments of teachers' distance learning practices. We asked questions about that. And then we had demographic information on all of the families. Here's kind of what the surveys, we had 1,400 parents reply back to our set of surveys, a really solid number. You can see the different numbers from each of the schools there. Feel like we got good participation across the district in all of our schools. Here's some of the key summary parts. So I've gotten this data back, but we don't have all of it. Specifically, the open-ended questions are still being rated, but because we're already starting to work on designing this model, I asked them to give us the best summaries that they could so I could present to you tonight. The majority of parents reported that one or more adults supervised the children's schoolwork. So 40% of the parents, basically, they were not supervising the kids' work at home. Approximately 1/3 of those children completed their schoolwork independently during the pandemic. 8% reported siblings, cousins, or other non-adult family members supervised their children's schoolwork. And racial minority families were much more likely to report that a non-adult family member was either a cousin, a brother, or sister, were helping to do implement the schoolwork at home than as compared to our white families. The assessment of the children's experience with schooling at home. The majority of parents reported that children struggled more with their schoolwork during the pandemic than before the pandemic. However, approximately half of the parents reported that overall schooling went well for their children. What I think I heard from various sources was parents, I think, saw that our teachers had great empathy and really wanted to reach out and try and help. It was still a challenge to do that work. And you'll see that come up again when we start talking about staff. Families who were higher in socioeconomic status were more likely to report that school at home went well and less likely to report their children struggled. So again, the higher socioeconomic seemed to have more help around to do that. If both parents were working at home, that was more of a challenge. Assessment of the workload. Parents on average felt that teachers assigned the right amount of work during the pandemic. However, racial minority versus white families with one or more essential worker and lower socioeconomic status, so more social, less affluent family and more essential workers in the family, so they were actually out of the house having to work. They were more likely to believe that teachers assigned too much work during the pandemic. Evaluation of teachers. Overall, parents felt that teachers cared about how the families were doing during the pandemic and that teachers had been helpful during the pandemic. Racial minority versus white and higher socioeconomic status families were more likely to report that teachers were helpful during the pandemic. Higher socioeconomic status families were also more likely to feel that teachers cared about their families. Teachers, parents felt that the most helpful thing that teachers in schools did during the pandemic was providing their family with school supplies, computers, and hotspots. It came up in several different parts of the surveys. The next most helpful practices centered on communication with parents, weekly emails describing the week's agendas, phone, email, virtual meetings, holding virtual teaching sessions, those types of things. We also heard that this weekly email that teachers they didn't feel like it was really connecting well, but the parents really appreciated the organization of it. The software, I think that we were using, Google Classroom, I don't think also led to like organizing the students' work really well. We heard that in several places. You'll hear it come up later, that was a challenge for some of our parents and our students. Challenges that students experience beyond difficulty staying engaged, motivated in online learning. This is from the parents' point of view, by the way. So these were the challenges that they felt their students experienced. Beyond difficulty staying engaged, motivated in online learning, getting help from teachers and peers. Parents felt their children struggled with the lack of physical activity, social interaction, and the structure during the pandemic. Many parents reported these struggles led to psychological difficulties, meltdown, stress, crying, depression, loneliness. So the social interaction piece was critical. Lack of clear, consistent communication about expectations, assignments, deadlines, and work completion was a problem. We heard parents describe it as, their kids were getting behind and they didn't know it. The work wasn't all in a place. They had 5 different classrooms and 5 different teachers and 5 different Google Classrooms. So where do I go to find out if my student is behind or not? Difficulty supervising children's work because parents were also working from home. children were less receptive to parent versus teacher input. So again, it created lots of dynamics in the house where the parent is trying to now teach, and that isn't always a positive interaction. Dissatisfaction with the pass-fail grading system. It disadvantages high-achieving students who and those who work hard to improve their grades prior to the pandemic. It doesn't incentivize students. Again, we saw quite a bit of conversation around whatever we're doing this fall, we need to find a way to begin to I'd say credit, but not all of our kids get credit. But I think the point is that we need to be teaching, and that we need to be assessing, and we need to be determining that whether or not kids are moving forward. And that was hard in our spring experience. Here are kind of the parents' hopes for the 2021 school year. Parents reward. So again, this is some of the open. I'm still waiting to get the open-ended questions back. But here's what the University of Michigan group reported back to me. Parents reported a variety of instructional preferences. They want a return to in-person instruction. They're looking for the smaller in-person classes. There's like a hybrid and flexible options for family. And what the University of Michigan group described to me is they're saying a lot of the open-ended comments that they're getting basically sit on both poles. Like, we have folks who are saying that it's not safe and I'm not sending my kids back to your schools. And then we also have parents who are saying, this is, we need schools open, we need kids attending every day. And so there's a real mix of kind of what this type of instruction is going to look like in the fall. I don't think there was a clear, go ahead.
I saw today on Facebook a comment. Well, there was a whole list of people's comments about opening school in the fall. And a number of people just said, well, we're going to opt out of school for next year. And there seems to be a misinformation that you can just totally opt out of school. But there was a handful on Facebook that said that was going to be their option. And you know, so somehow, you know, we have to communicate that that's not an option. The other is, what percentage of kids participated or did not participate in this instruction from March to June? Do we know? Do the teachers know in the buildings? You know, did we have 50% of kids participating or 75%?
So it went a couple of different ways. I'm going to have John step in here, and he's not going to have the exact numbers, but we did do some in talking with principals, kind of keeping track of how many kids we were still engaging every day. We were up over, I wanted to say, at the middle school, we were up over, and it depended upon which house you were in, but we were up over 50. I mean, we were in the 70% kind of range for kids being engaged. And John, do you have any memory or of kind of where we were grade level by grade level? I lost John. I'll get that information from him and send it out, Kate. Again, it depended upon the school, but we had pretty good success. I mean, I'm thinking upwards of 3/4 of the kids are still active and engaged in what was going on, but let me get those numbers out to you.
The other last question is, do we have a plan? I did read through your report, but do we have a plan to reach out to those families that did not participate in the fall, like home visits or something?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those details are going to get created. I'll kind of talk about it at the very end here, but what we have to do this Thursday, I'm going to send out kind of a survey. I'll spend some time talking about where we're at basically, and then I'll send out a survey to our community to get feedback on some of the different things we're looking at. I think that we're going to have some folks who want to continue to do an all online because it doesn't feel safe right now. I think we have other folks who are going to be more open to a hybrid experience of some sort. So I'm kind of working through those. But Thursday I'll do the survey, and then hopefully by the end of the month we're going to send out here's what our system is going to look like. It's going to be a hybrid of some sort right now. If we see those infection rates continue to go up, it could very easily go to all distance learning to begin the year. So, John.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I pinpointed your presentation, then I couldn't get back to the mute or the camera, so I had to log off and log back in. I apologize, everyone. What we notice is participation really dropped significantly. The middle school remained pretty high, but they were used to the digital components. But the most interaction that was sustained was real-time interaction between a teacher and students. When it came to the actual doing assignments or working on their own independently, that's where we saw a real steep drop. And that was most concerning with some of our special populations, our underserved populations. So we're working together to identifying technology solutions that will allow that real-time access, whether or not a student's in the room or not, and the tools they need to really set the teachers up for success.
So the other, this is still from the parents, the kind of concerns that they started expressing about the fall would be varied in the extent to which they were concerned about the CDC safety guidelines. And those are masks, washing, social, how far apart are our desks? What's the maximum number of students that we have in the classroom? Those are all laid out in both the CDC and ODE's guidelines. Some parents wanted schools to implement CDC safety recommendations, which is what we're working on. Others were concerned that schools would not be able to effectively implement these practices. And then still other focused parent on making school as normal as possible, advocating for ignoring the CDC recommendations. We had parents all over the place on kind of what they're expecting from us in the fall. Parents reported a variety of requests for instructional focus. Challenging students. So again, the way in which we run our distance learning, they want to see that be more robust. We're instructing and assessing students on the materials that whether they're in for some number of days in person and then they're distance learning the other. They want a much more robust experience. Allow time to review the material missed during the COVID-19. They're concerned about how are we going to catch kids up? What's our plan for ensuring that kids are moving forward at the right speeds? Greater use of differentiated instruction. The return of extracurricular and specials was another thing they mentioned. The relationship building between teachers and students. If we start in the fall, they had already created relationships in the fall when we were all in person. And so moving to the distance learning, they still all knew each other. There's a concern about how do we build relationships with kids in distance if we start all distance learning. And then greater communication with parents, continuing to make sure that parents know where students are at and the rest. Technology, assuming that distance learning will continue to in some extent in the fall, they expressed a desire for better, easier to use technology. We're already off and rolling on this because to carry off the more assessment and a more robust experience, we're going to need better technology. So we're already off and we'll be bringing to you some ideas about what that might look like. That's what John was talking about. We're already starting to talk about PD, and I'll be bringing you some more requests on that end too. They felt the teachers are using too many different platforms and they're difficult to keep track of. This is that idea of like the Google Classrooms are all in a different split space. They need where a student logs in and there are his class or her classes. So it's more organized. Several parents expressed frustration over not being able to track which assignments their children had submitted. So again, it goes back to this learning management system, the LMS that we're trying to teach this in. They need better tools. Parents had also hoped for more live virtual teaching and fewer pre-recorded lessons. Whatever we're doing, most of our sessions were only for a half hour in the spring. So we're going to have to deal with time and how much time kids are in a actual lesson, that kind of thing. A more consistent schedule for online classes, like there's actual meeting times, and a greater range of options for student participation beyond Google Meet. Some expressed some privacy comfort concerns with children participating in video calls. And that'll be hard for us no matter what happens next year, because if we're in a distance learning, there's going to be some sort of video component that we're going to have to work through. But whatever we pick is going to have to still qualify, like meet some standards around our ability to control it. So that was kind of what we learned so far from parents about this. This next is going to be the staff surveys. And there's actually two surveys here. The first one was through our University of Michigan colleagues. And then the second one is some information we got from that just FGEA put out. But I wanted to present it to you because I think it has a perspective and some information for us. Again, the questions we were asking were the effects of COVID-19 on physical, financial, and psychological well-being of our staff members' experiences, the discussion of racial violence in the classroom, and the demographic characteristics. When I send you the other parts of this report, there's some more information about the protests and some of those things that we asked some questions about of our staff members. Here's kind of the data. Again, a pretty good spread of teachers across the district. We collected 451. I think we have close to 700 staff. So it's probably 2/3 of our staff. Key considerations. Compared to the parents' report, staff members believe that more students lacked adult supervision. So it felt like kids weren't getting as much help as they needed in their home to complete the lessons. The majority of staff members reported that their students struggled more with their schoolwork during the pandemic than before when they were live in person. And 77% of our staff felt that schooling at home went poorly for students overall. Staff members reported that school days during the pandemic felt moderately more stressful and anxiety-filled compared to the school days before the pandemic. Staff members reported that they focused on keeping students academically and socially engaged during the pandemic was kind of their focus. Staff members also felt that the most helpful thing teachers did during the pandemic was providing families with the school supplies, computers, and hotspots. Notably, parents on average rated weekly emails describing the learning goals as one of the most helpful practices. However, staff members rated this practice as one of the least helpful. So I'm curious about that perception, because again, I think our families appreciated the emails and kind of the organizing factors behind them. Staff members on average experienced decrease in interdependence with their students and colleagues. Interdependence is a thing that we've been working on through our equity teams. Our students of color do better in more interdependent environments. And so one of the things that we've been working on over the last 2 years is to create interdependence between our students. And the virtual world was really hard to make that happen, especially since Google doesn't have some of the Google Meet doesn't have some of the tools for teachers to make small groups where teachers could, where kids could speak to each other and talk to each other. All of our dual language schools use a methodology called bilingual pairs, where they pair up students and they do a lot of talk between the two groups. Our technology really got in the way of that. However, our racial minority staff members experienced greater interdependence with their students during the pandemic as compared to their white staff members. And again, I think that has to do a little bit with our staff of color's own way of working with kids. Challenges, many staff members reported challenges related to teaching remotely, providing academic support, like how do we get connected with kids, staying socially connected. Our teachers reported feeling disconnected is a large problem. Working long hours to prepare the virtual lessons. We transferred the whole district into distance learning in 14 days. And so there's a lot of PD. Teachers did an awesome job transitioning, but it was a lot of hard work for our staff. Keeping students academically involved, we heard that, again, while they were interested in the lessons, the virtual lessons in person, we had a lot more problems having them complete things offline. And then teaching while being at home with family. So our staff members really struggled as they were trying to be teachers for their own kids and have to prepare lessons and teach to their classes. That was a real challenge. Hopes for next year. We didn't get very far on this. These responses are still being coded. Type of instruction preferred, COVID-19 concerns, all the things we saw in the parents, but I didn't really get this data back from the University of Michigan. So this next little bit of data is from the union, the licensed union, and they had 143 responses. And I wanted to share it with you because I thought there was some good information here. The first is what went well with distance learning. I have 2 slides here, but some of the highest agreement by those folks learned new engaging technologies. Again, the number of people who have new skills is across our district is really incredible. And we did it out of necessity, but again, I think all of us can see some new ways that we might be able to teach in the future. Class meeting participation, time to chat and connect, got to know kids better, 27. Staff collaboration, supporting each other. Again, the success in all of this work had to do with how parents and families felt our teachers' empathy and the way that they collaborated with each other. That was really the success of our spring. One-on-one group, small group tutoring, teachers thought went well. Daily schedule structure, students got into a routine, teacher planning routine, those went well. We start getting into smaller numbers here, but focus on essential learning, paring down to the most important instruction, positive messaging from the district administration, grace, no pressure. We were in a tough spot. We wanted people just to reach out and connect with kids. Students had a flexible day, leniency on due dates, or staff already using some of the tech, connecting. Yay, tech department, I'd echo that. It seems like everything that we've done since March 12th has been like, we've had like 2 days to implement it, and folks have really stepped up to just make it work. So that was what they, the staff, through the union survey thought went well. What was difficult? The disconnect. No face-to-face. I feel it myself in just me trying to run a district right now. Not being able to connect with people is really a challenge. Something that we still have to work on. Low student participation engagement was again another very, teachers saw that as an issue. Not actually teaching. So many of our strategies over the past 10 years have evolved into these small group, partner shares. And the technology we gave teachers didn't allow them to do any of that. So it becomes a very, like tonight, it's a very unidirectional kind of exchange of information, right? It's me talking and doing this. So there's some real challenges of how we can get more creative. No accountability. Can't tell who's watched the video. They didn't have great assessment tools. So their ability to actually do some, like in the middle of this lesson for me to kick out a formative assessment to you and say, what have you learned so far? None of our technology had those tools. Workload. It takes so long to get so little done. In this virtual world, everything takes longer. my administrative meetings, it's like I could have covered these things in 15 minutes and now they take an hour, 2 hours. So it's a harder working environment. Equity, weak internet, families needing tech support, children who can't read, trying to follow written directions, at-risk students able to access online curriculum. One of the big challenges that I think we've seen in this spring experience is our kids who need help. Whether you're talking about ELL, whether you're talking about our special education students, whether it's just kids who need more processing time, that's been a little bit of an issue for us, and something that we're going into the fall, we're spending a lot of time thinking about how are we going to provide extra support for specific sets of students. Using the tech, helping children figure out the tech, Google Classroom, not great for younger kids. Classes using different platforms really challenged our trying to contact students and families. We had a lot of, not a lot, maybe that's the wrong word, but we had students who ghosted us, who just disappeared. And our administrators and our classified staff are calling families, and we probably need to have a more robust plan of how we're gonna drive out to folks' houses and connect with them, because it was easy for families to ghost us. Job description. So again, our job description of teachers completely changed. It became a whole new job for them. And so how was that connected to that learning the tech, home life? The home life is a real challenge. And I know I'm working with Washington County SUPS to start talking about childcare for our staff. And I don't have any new news for you, but I know we're working on that because it's going to become an issue. Somewhere around 24% of our staff are going to have a childcare issue in the fall because we're going to need them to come to school every day, and their kids are going to most likely be home. And so there's some real challenges for us. What would you do differently? This came from staff, and I'm going to hit, there's kind of some small numbers here, but I wanted to prepare parents and students for digital learning with some in-person training, or maybe some training for families that they could dial into and learn more about the system. Checking with families in person, empathy interviews, live teaching, more live meetings. That seemed to be another big piece of trying to find a way to engage kids for a longer part of the day. Some form of accountability, letter grades, missing work. Training staff on tech practices and platforms. We're already off and rolling on this. As no matter what happens next year, we've got to provide staff opportunities to learn and collaborate around this new medium that we're teaching in. And we didn't get much time to do it, but we're going to need more time. I know different districts are changing calendars already, and I'll bring back to you some ideas on what we're going to need for PD come this fall at the next board meeting, August 10th. Train staff on tech practices, platforms, better lessons, differentiate. I think if they have some better tools, I think our teachers' creativity will create some better lessons. I know many of the younger grade ideas we have right now have this, we're going to have to still deal with paper copies and some packets and some work for kids to be moving on. Okay, I'm coming in, I'm getting towards the end. This last one, what are your greatest concerns about starting school next year? Health and safety of our staff and students, our primary concern. Trying to wear, what's going to be the mask? So how are we dealing with some of the CDC guidelines? Rooms with few windows, poor ventilation, how do we deal with that? How to ensure social distancing? We're going to have to worry about social distancing of our students and our staff. Staff members who are connecting with other staff members have the ability to cross cohorts for us. So this is going to be quite a challenge. Time, supplies, there's a money piece here. Greatest concerns, education via trying to teach and do the specialist jobs online. Again, that comes back to our ELL and SPED, and we didn't have we need a much more solid plan going into the fall. Doing double the work, online and hybrid. How are we going to deal with teachers teaching and also having kids in a distance learning situation? We're going to start this fall and none of the kids are going to know their teacher. So how are we going to work the building a bond? Hopefully in the hybrid, we'll be able to create some of that. And then this accountability piece. What are the greatest concerns? Either way, the hybrid, not knowing what plan it'll be. We're moving quickly. It's just that, again, the world changes week to week right now. And so it's making this challenging to get a plan out there. Next week, the week of the 20th, the individual school teams will be meeting and they'll be beginning to put together their basic individual school plans. Taking care of my own family and their health. Staffing and the budget cuts, I think if everything goes as the way the governor is saying right now, we're gonna move into next year with a more solid budget position. I don't want to say too much, but feels like we're not in a bad spot there. Okay, last thing, student surveys, and these ones, what we talked with the students about was effects of COVID-19 on their students' functioning, their psychological well-being, experience with schooling at home during COVID-19, and then the interdependence that they felt with their families and their classmates and their teachers. We had 1,600 that were complete enough for us to include in the analysis. In this initial report, we're kind of summarizing them across all schools. We didn't have a chance to break this one out by schools. And then we're kind of finding the average for each of the grade level. Racial minority students at the 3rd, 5th, and the 6th through 12th reported more difficulty doing their schoolwork in the pandemic as before. They saw this as more challenging. Our racial minority students at these grade levels also tended to experience greater difficulty focusing and more anxiety arising from the COVID-19 compared to their white peers. Overall, students reported moderately negative impacts of COVID-19 on their ability to do their schoolwork, their ability to focus, and their anxiety. These effects differed by grade level, with older students reporting the most negative effects and the younger students reporting the least negative effects. School attitudes. Despite experiencing moderate levels of difficulty with their schoolwork during the pandemic, students overall reported really positive attitudes towards their school and high levels of teacher trust among younger students. The teacher trust is a measure that we use to talk about identity safety. As do kids feel safe to be themselves at school? And so this teacher trust value is one that we've used in past surveys as a way of distinguishing that. At the 3rd and 5th and the 6th through 12th, racial minority students reported more positive school attitudes, but less teacher trust compared to their white students. Students at all grade levels reported receiving the most help from parents, teachers, and then non-adult family members, and then lastly, classmates. Racial minority students were more likely to receive the schoolwork help from teachers and then a non-adult family member, which was a little bit different than their white colleagues. Overall, students reported feeling closest to their families, then their teachers, and then their classmates. Younger students tended to report greater closeness to each of these groups, but at the 6th through 12th grade level, racial minority students reported greater closeness than white students. Concerns that the students had. We need to provide our teachers with better tools. They noticed that, again, it was hard to do the work with the tools that we were using. Organize the classes and materials in an easier package for students, parents, and other adults who are assisting students in completing the assessments. Teachers need better video conferencing tools to allow them more flexibility, security, and control of the virtual environment. Teachers need better assessment tools, as we will need to begin to assess student work virtually. And then lastly, teachers need PD and collaboration time to continue to evolve their practice in this new environment. And that's just a whole lot of information that we are trying to analyze and make decisions about. This week, we're finalizing kind of some conversations with folks around the school level groups. We're comparing with other districts around us. I met today with Washington County SUPS and heard what the different frameworks they're working on. Next week, individual school teams will begin to develop their plans. I will do some kind of communication and community outreach next week. This Thursday, we'll push out a survey. Next week, I'll do some sort of community outreach to find out what people are, how they're feeling about some of the ideas that we're pushing out about what school may look like. And then I'm hoping that by the end of this month, we'll have a pretty solid plan to push out to the community and let people know before August kind of what is our plan. It'll look very similar. I mean, we've already seen some of the hybrid ideas that are coming out of Hillsborough and Beaverton. There's nobody that's doing things. We're thinking about those things similarly. It's just that there's some individual pieces in each of the districts that we're working through. And with that, I'd take some questions, or I can go back to anything that you have questions about.
Dave, this is really very helpful information, and thank you to you and your staff, because the challenges are huge and also many unknowns. But I do want to go back that in this pandemic, everyone is being impacted, and emotionally and socially, and when you have a situation like this, there's all kinds of abuse, and just because of the pressures. And I might suggest that I did this when I was when I taught, that I, at the beginning of the year, went and visited every family. And if there's those students out there that have not connected, if there's any way that we can figure out a way that each teacher could go over a period of time to go visit their students to connect, especially if we don't open in the fall. I hope we do, but I don't know about the virus. At least that would give the teacher an opportunity to face-to-face to meet with the parents and look at the situation in the home. Do they have computers? What are their needs? Anytime you meet people in person, it breaks down those barriers. But I do worry about those children that, are having social and emotional problems and abuse. And when you said that there's those kids out there that you don't know where they are, this would be a good opportunity to connect. But I'm very concerned. At least when the kids were coming to school, we could have a check-in with absentees and that. And the way we're doing this now is there's no real safeguard for the kids. So, and I know your staff is thinking about these, but as a board member, I'm really concerned about the children.
Absolutely. I would have two kind of comments there. One is that our counselors are actually working overtime right now, connecting with kids. The other thing is what Kate Brown said in that budget message, I'm very interested in, because of when she talked about a 37% decrease in SIA and Measure 90, kind of that whole Student Success Act, that still sounds like there's a significant amount of money that they may be pushing through SIA. And as you remember, our plan for SIA dollars, the big part was around social emotional learning and then some ELL pieces. And so I think we still have some opportunities here. dependent upon what happens with this budget, to actually do some more outreach here. And so I know I'll be very interested in this special session. And that's one of the things I'm going to be looking specifically at is what kind of money is going to flow through this SIA? Did we get the $9 billion, and what kind of money is going to flow through the SIA? Narce, I think Narce has a question.
I have a question. I think I might have asked this before, but I don't remember. Are most school districts using the technology that the students were talking about? For Google versus Zoom. Zoom has a lot of capabilities of chat rooms and all kinds of ways to do things for community purposes. Is there a reason why we're using Google?
It was expeditious at the moment, but you're absolutely talking about the thing that we're already looking at, which is the LMS Canvas is what we're currently kind of working through. I believe we're about to kind of purchase those pieces. We're looking at Zoom. We're getting some prices right now, but specifically our teachers need the ability to create quickly smaller groups and to be able to assess on the fly. And that's all built into Zoom. And we saw on Google Classroom has it as somewhere down the road, they're going to try and build those functions in, but we have no timeline for that, and we can't wait. So we're absolutely kind of moving towards some tech tools that will give our teachers the ability to assess, to create small groups, to do partner shares and some other pieces.
Thank you for the presentation. It is heartbreaking in regards to what's happening to our kiddos because of this pandemic, in particular marginalized populations, already at a very disadvantage by just not having the privilege of big homes and being pretty much piled up in little apartments or migrant camps. So that breaks my heart.
Thanks for the information, Dave. A couple of quick things. I just want to say that I think it's vitally important that we get our plan out ASAP. I mean, I know there's so many unknowns, but I just don't see the unknowns changing. There's always going to be unknowns, it seems like. It's kind of the new norm. And parents really need to start planning, and teachers really need to start planning. And they can't really do that till we have our plan.
Agreed. Let me see what I can do. I have the basics of it. We'll push out some stuff this Thursday. As soon as I get these school level teams, the individual school teams meeting, and I get a little better indication about whether or not we can make some of these things work. There's some students who need more support, and we're gonna have to figure out a way to get them into our schools to provide that extra support and still maintain all the CDC guidelines. So those are the pieces that I really want to get our teachers, our administrators hammering out. So that's where I'm at. John, do you have a different thought about how quickly we might be able to push some of this out?
No, I think that we could push out some of the basics like we were talking about, an enriched model, in response to the parent feedback that we received, through the surveys, just exactly what you were saying. We did have the opportunity to share our rough thumbnail plan with our union leadership, and they were extremely excited with the better tools that we're talking about. We're not only getting Canvas, but Canvas Suite. It allows Screencastify and some other components. We're also in Narce, exactly what you were talking about in terms of Zoom. Our teachers have taken classes and they've used that, so they were excited about that. But I think we can definitely put out, some basics, and we can get that out. I can get that to Dave by this Thursday, for general communication.
Yeah, that would be great if you guys could, because I was under the impression that that's what was going to come out at the beginning of the month. And then then we got the update and I was like, okay, this is kind of more of the same.
Yeah, and I just think that it's fair to point out that ODE worked with a lot of key districts in this process. The 5 large ones worked with them. And in my very first meeting, they're like, okay, this is what we've put together and this is the process that we've used. And I'm like, whoa, 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 we haven't heard any of these things yet. In Forest Grove, how did you, well, we're working with ODE. Okay, so we're kind of at a disadvantage. I just wanted to point that out quickly. Now, the benefit is we get to see what their plans are. Right. But I think you're right, Val, in terms of they're wanting a thumbnail sketch. What does that look like? 2 days a week in, full-time, real-time access. We're also discussing, bottom line is, what about, God forbid, the families or students that actually contract, the virus, and they cannot access real time. They're going to have just-in-time access. So we're pretty extremely pleased with the solution that we've identified that allows that flexibility for individual students and families as needed.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I have a comment. Just basically, Dave, what we had talked about before, and I agree with Val about the sooner the better, getting at least the outline of what the fall is going to look like with a contingency of an A, B, or an A plan, a B plan, but some type of structure that parents and teachers can at least tie into, even though that it could change. But I think that we've seen things like this when the bigger districts move forward. We can learn a lot from them and then figure out what's working and what's not working.
Yeah. Now we can do that. Again, the survey that's going out on Thursday will be, what do you think about this? So, we're going to produce the basic framework of this. So, but we will do that. Absolutely.
Dave, I was, quick question, and I'm probably getting into the weeds. I'm just wondering because, the weeks are going pretty fast. So one of it's the communication back to the parents and the students in particular. Do you have particular task force that are working on specifics, such as, does a parent need to know what they need to do for their son or daughter when they're getting ready to go to school, take their temperature? Is the school going to provide backpacks for low income with masks, hand sanitizer? All the little details that just can parents either can afford or cannot afford. So just wondering about that.
So we have created committees. We have a kind of an operations committee that is specifically working on a lot of the details that you just talked about that right there. We'll be pushing out some kind of early August. We're going to need parents to actually tell us what exactly declare what they want to do. We've got committees kind of working on what is it going to look like in elementary school, what's going to look like in middle school, and what's going to look like at the high school. The next 2 weeks, they'll be working. There's another set of committees that are school level, individual school committees that are kind of figuring this out for each individual school. The schools will have similar plans, but it'll look slightly different in Echo Shaw than it's going to look at Joe Gale. And so those schools have to figure out all of those details. Those blueprints we'll bring to you on August 10th, and you'll see every school's exact plan written out is kind of what that plan is. But yeah, no, there's lots of committees rolling right now.
Thank you, Dave.
You bet. Other questions I can answer?
I have one more question, I promise. Yep. What about teachers that don't want to go back to work because of fear?
So right now, one of the other pieces of information we got back from the unions. There's about 27% of our staff right now, this would be licensed, that have concerns either for themselves having a health condition or someone they live with having a health condition. So this vulnerable population, it's a big question for us. I don't have an answer for you at this moment what the final determination is going to be. We're kind of working through that with legal and the different districts. The issue here is that if we're going to keep our class sizes at 12 to 18, we need all of our folks in the building. And if we don't have folks reporting to work in the building, it means those class sizes are going up. So we've got some real challenges here to try and figure out how to run this and still keep our people safe. And I don't have a good answer for it. And I know that every other superintendent in the district, there's two big, large worries for us right now. The first one is childcare, making sure that our folks can report to work. And then the second one is our vulnerable populations. And I don't have an answer for this yet. I just know we're trying to work through those pieces.
Okay.
I had many more questions than I had answers tonight. Sorry.
That's a lot of stuff that you presented there. I mean, that's a lot. All that survey data and everything. So yeah, we talked a little bit of, about trying to get something out as quick as we can that we think is a good, I guess, conservative, safe start to the school year plan, right? And recognizing that it could change over the next 6 weeks or whatever between the start of school for a positive or a negative, one way or another. But so I know you're working on it.
Yeah. I think my biggest focus right now is, for me, I think we have to focus on having a robust distance learning entity, because once we have that, if we're in a hybrid, we still have something solid. Kids know where to go to get their stuff. They know, and so that's really what we've been working with teaching and learning around. Is that has to be the center right now while we're still waiting to figure out. If we have that designed well, then the hybrid part of this, where they're coming for a couple of days, it becomes more like a flipped classroom, right? Where we're running the class in the distance learning, but then the 2 days that they come in, then we're helping them, supporting them, answering the questions that they weren't getting answered at home or that the parents couldn't answer. And so that distance learning thing is really the piece that we've got to be solid on.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dave. That was a good presentation. Tons of stuff there. So
yeah.
Let's see. We've got, I think that kind of wraps it up. We've got future items or other board comments. Are there any this evening before we close the meeting? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and conclude tonight's school board meeting at 7:26 p.m. So have a great rest of the evening, everybody, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, good night.
Good night.